we are recording this about, I don't know, 5-10 minutes or so after Germany get eliminated by England. Toni Kroos is heading home, which may be a good thing for us Real Madrid fans, but we obviously want our players to succeed as well. So not a good day for Kroos in Germany. A great day for England, and we're definitely hearing all about it on the timeline. And we're gonna talk about this game. We're gonna talk about Kroos' performance, and we'll touch on some of yesterday's games as well. Welcome to the show. I feel like it's been a long time since we recorded, like you and I. You've been on Las Blancas, obviously, with Grant, but I don't know. Since the season ended, we've just kind of, you've been doing your thing, I've been doing my thing, and so it's nice to reconnect. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been busy as hell. Yesterday was insane for basically everyone. Today, much calmer. Both, I think, in just the events around us, but also in the way the game was played as well. Like, this was totally antithetical to the types of games we saw yesterday. Saw a lot of people complaining about the type of football being played, but this is what I expected coming from Gareth Southgate. And I also didn't expect Germany to go all out kind of after how they'd been scarred in defensive transition in the group stages.
I think, I'm not surprised that, especially in this relates to a game involving England, maybe not so much Germany, because Germany, if you give them some space and all that stuff, they can have a little bit of fun. They can also get carved. But more so with England, it's not surprising to me that this game wasn't as exciting as Look, to be fair, anything compared to yesterday is basically a come down. Like, we can't expect to just be on that roller coaster for 2 days straight, because yesterday was it was an anomaly that we had two games like that. Actually, it's never happened before in the history of this competition where you had three games in one day. But so it's not, while it wasn't surprising to me to see a game like this today involving England, I also like the part of the fun thing about tournaments like this, like the Euros and the World Cup, is that something eventually will happen. Even if the game is boring for 80 minutes, 90 minutes, eventually it's just something's going to happen because it has to. There has to be a winner. There can't be a draw and then we go home, we each get a point. Something is bound to happen. So for that reason, you're on the edge of your seat for at least, you're waiting for that to kind of jump off the seat. It came in the shape of England finally breaking through. And to be quite honest, between the two teams, I think England did the more positive things in terms of attempting to break lines and trying to figure out a way to exploit Germany. Germany defended really well. England defended really well. And part of the reason that the fact that they both defended well and also took out each other's flanks was part of the reason why this game was a little bit boring. But it did have its moments. So do you want to start with Toni Kroos, or do you want to start with something else that would lead into Toni Kroos discussion?
We could start anywhere. We could start with Kroos. I obviously have tactical thoughts about what Southgate and Lowe did for Germany. Kroos, I was kind of disappointed in terms of the overall performance. I don't think it was his usual on-ball game, and obviously we're comparing Kroos against his own standards, which are the highest in the world on the ball, but 86.5% passing accuracy. We've seen Kroos do better. Defensively, I thought he was a little suspect on the first goal that England scored. I don't think he was the primary one. I think maybe Kimmich actually made the biggest mistake in not reacting properly and sitting too much inside when in fact he had a center back next to him. But I think Kroos just let Sterling squeeze through that gap when he dribbled through a little too easily. I know Rudiger was on him, but Kroos was right there, and he was sort of shading to guard a passing lane to someone back inside. But as soon as Sterling makes that move, he kind of has to react there, I think, and go for the challenge, even if it's a foul, because if it breaks through, there's all that space on the far side. And, that's just the type of thing that Kroos can be a little off with, right? Defensively, he's not necessarily going to react instantly to shut down threats like that. He's more of a positional player. So, it's not, I guess sometimes you see that from him. But on ball, it didn't feel like the normal Kroos game where everything was under his control. He was cleanly picking out every single pass. He had some giveaways, and the only real wow moment I got from his passing was an early switch to Kimmich in the first half. Maybe you saw a couple others that maybe caught your eye, but just in general, it was a quieter game from him. And that's a little disappointing because, in my opinion, he's the best central midfielder in the world, and I think he could have done just a little better to break lines more accurately, just be a little smarter with some of his positioning. ultimately it was a more average game for him, and I don't think that's like the reason Germany went out, but obviously Kroos playing at his best maybe pushes Germany through.
It's also weird because I agree with you that he was quiet, and a lot of these notes that I have on Kroos were kind of sporadic, and he's just kind of floating in and out of the game and not that involved. And it's kind of unfortunate because he also had the second most touches of anyone on the field today, behind Hummels, I think it was, who had the most. And England let him have the ball. Like, it's not like he didn't have the ball, he wasn't on the ball enough. He was on the ball enough. He just was quiet when he had the ball. And England let him play that quarterback role. But they also, like, if you look at the passes that Kroos was trying to pick out, like, I think you mentioned the one in the first half, right? Was that, I think...
It was to Kimmich.
To Kimmich, right.
Top.
Wasn't that, and it actually turned out to be offside, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, it turned out to be offside. So, I mean, I just thought it was a good ball, so
Right.
I mentioned it. But if you only count, like, the official ones, he actually didn't complete any long balls this game, which I don't
Shocking.
know when's the last time you can say that about Toni Kroos.
I mean, usually when you look at the Kroos stat line, it's like 8 for 8 long balls. Like it's like that something like that would be very, very um, common for him. But 0 for 0 was, or sorry, 0 for 4 accurate long balls is definitely a strange one. And so that to me also points to the fact that England defended
Yeah.
well, and by allowing him to have the ball, I mean, there's two sides of the coin. I remember on that pass to Kimmich, the commentator was like, "You can't allow Kroos time on the ball and stuff like that," which is not an incorrect thing to say. I mean, we saw what happened when Chelsea did that to him in the first leg of that tie, where I think it was Chelsea or Liverpool, where Liverpool allowed him to do that, and Kroos was just ripping them apart in the first leg. There's another side of it where it's like, if you let him do that, there is a bit of redundancy to his role, in that if you close off every single passing lane that he can possibly connect with, and all he has is the kind of just option of just passing back and forth with Hummels, that's actually a pretty good, decent way of taking him out of the game. So England are like, I don't know, I suppose like props to Southgate, because he's kind of like the Luis Enrique of his side of the bracket. Everyone complains about the players he's putting on the field, and Spain are probably more entertaining than England to watch, but they're getting results and it's working. And even like when you look at the names on the bench, and Sancho and Mount, two players like, to me, is like would start on almost any team, and they probably even should start in this England team even. It's like, you look at Sterling today in particular, Sterling and Saka, they both tried to make lines. I think Sterling was probably a standout for England offensively, and you could argue he should have passed on a couple of occasions when he didn't, but overall he contributed a lot to the attack just by moving a lot off the ball, by being one of the main line breakers against a very, very good Germany defense that packed the flanks. I think all of that, they deserve to come out on top in this game.
I think Sterling was quite good. Saka was a little interesting for me. I would have just preferred Sancho, especially if you're considering Germany. If they're not going to have most of the ball, it's probably going to be more of a 50-50 possession duel. You will get counter-attacking chances, and you want to attack that back line in transition as much as possible. The freezing out of Sancho is interesting to me. I'm not sure I quite understand it, but I understand the Sterling bit. Even if he hadn't had the greatest season at City, I think he makes a lot of sense for this England side. So in terms of the Kroos thing, and you mentioned Germany doing things to nullify, England doing things to nullify him, not Germany.
Probably Germany too, a little bit.
Probably Germany too, but I think the back five choice from Southgate was really key. I think that's essentially the best thing he did. And that was sort of criticized pre-match because, it looks like he's going more conservative, and it was a defensive move, but I absolutely think was the right one. So if we think about both what Kroos does on ball and how Germany destroyed Portugal, it's all about the 5 versus 4 they can create and the amount of respect that front three garners, because they're actually disciplined about attacking the channels and occupying the center backs, right? So when you have like 3 of those types of players, and today it was Werner, Muller, and Havertz, that's a 3 versus 2 versus the center back have to tuck inside if it's a back four. And then you have Gosens and Kimmich going down on the outside. And Portugal just got massacred by that very simple fact. And I think Southgate looked at this game and said, that is the biggest key to Germany's attacking success, and I need to try to take that away. So I'm going to a back five. He had the personnel to do it. Trippier was an interesting choice at right wing back in terms of open play, but we know that Southgate essentially likes to win games on the margin, and that set pieces are a huge part of his offense. So in that sense, Trippier makes sense because he's the main set piece taker and he's very good at it. And Kyle Walker obviously can slot in comfortably at right center back after what he's done with Guardiola. And John Stones, Maguire obviously picked themselves in that back line. And I thought the back three was immense defensively, which will probably be the underrated tactical story of the game. But the key thing, right, is he made a 5 versus 5. So Germany were rarely ever able to get that open switch to the far side because they had 5 players there. I think that's part of the reason Kroos not only attempted less long balls than he normally would, but was unable to complete any of them officially because the wingbacks were just fast out to get out to Gosens, to get out to Kimmich and try to cut it off. And so what that did was then put everything on progressing through central lanes. And now here's where I think England or Southgate maybe kind of made a mistake, because what he did was he defended in like a 5-2-3, right? Because it's a 3-4-3 attack, 5-2-3 defensive structure. So naturally you have 3 forwards matching up against the 3 center backs. And he just kind of went man to man and he said, my pivot, our double pivot can kind of handle Kroos and Goretzka. And Goretzka, by the way, I thought was a good introduction for this game. And that was a little risky because, yeah, I mean, sure, technically you have the cover, but when you think about it, all 3 of those forwards are free to drop and receive to feet if the double pivot's up on Germany's double pivot and the front 3 is up on the center backs, right? And I saw that happen multiple times in the game, and this is where the center backs, defensive performances come into play, because I thought they did a really, really good job to handle those forwards receiving to feet. But at the same time, I think Germany was more cautious than they normally would have been trying to break lines because they feared what England could do to them in transition. And so they were not going for it every single time, even though the open lanes were there, because I think, Hummels did a good job like dribbling by Kane when he stepped up, which gave them an overload. I think Kroos obviously is a master of evading pressure, and he wasn't really taken off the ball, and he would be able to create some space, and yet he wouldn't go for the tighter window pass. And if Germany were going to dominate England, that's what I think they had to do. But also there were times where sometimes they went for it and there was miscontrols, they lost the ball, and England were away. So it was about how do Germany try to manage risk, and ultimately they felt like it wasn't in their favor to try to exploit the overloads they had in the center, which is how they were going to win, unless it was like a set piece or a counterattack like we saw with the Werner chance or something. And so maybe Southgate got a little bit away with it there. I think that's, if you were to point out one error he made, to me, it was going with the 5-2-3 instead of doing what Germany was doing, which Havertz was tucking inside, coming into midfield, and making it a 5-3-2 defensive structure, which was much more secure and there wasn't as much risk. And that's where someone like Mason Mount, I think, is a big miss. And he was cleared to play, but I'm assuming the fact that he had to be in isolation and couldn't be in training up until now factored into Southgate's decision not to play him, because what's really cool, like the part of the storyline about these teams, is you have guys like Havertz and Mount who can basically do everything. They're these hybrid players who give you so many options and allow you to do something like this 3-4-3 with roaming forwards, but also having play a midfield role in defense, which is what Mason Mount does for Chelsea. So, yeah, I mean, I just tried to sum up what I thought was like the key tactical battles here and why England ended up winning out.